check out beacons.ai/comicsfunprofit for all the C4FAP links you could ever need, all in one place. You can provide feedback, listen, support, share, enjoy these. We have our Patreon there. You can buy us a beer or a coffee. You can check out our Instagrams, our Twitters, our Facebooks. Check out our YouTube page. You can email us. You can listen to our podcasts on Patreon, if you're a subscriber, on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, on Podbean. We have Google Podcasts on there. We have an Amazon wish list. You want to buy Kyle and I something? Fine. You can do that here. We appreciate it. We have Kyle's RPG podcast listed on there, so you can check out his Dork Day Afternoon offerings. We have Cowabunga links, so you can check out the Cowabunga Deep Discount FOC and pre-order list. Get on that. That's RLCS, so you can check that out as well. And we want to just give you opportunities to say hi, to check out what we're doing, support us if you would like, or just listen. Check out beacons.ai/comicsfunprofit for all the C4FAP links you could ever need. Thanks. Back to the show. It's time once again for our winter giveaway. This giveaway is very simple to enter. Be a patron. So the easiest way to enter is go to patreon.com/comicsfunprofit. Become a patron at any level at our Patreon site, and you can do it that way. You can also enter by going to Threadless and buying some merch and tagging us in a photo of you in said merch. So if you like one of our t-shirts or hats or whatever, and you go to comicsfunprofit.threadless.com and find all our merch and like some of it, buy it, wear it. You can either tag us in social with you wearing it, or send us a photo of you wearing it, and you're entered. So those are the two ways: be a patron and buy merch, and then you get entered in our winter giveaway, which is fun swag giveaways of photos and stickers and signed comics, just like our fall giveaway was. And we had 5 lucky winners win stuff in our fall giveaway. So we're hoping to have as many entrants this time that we can give away that many again. So be a patron, buy merch, enter the winter giveaway.
Aloha, it's Jason from Hawaii. Welcome to a special edition of the Comics for Fun and Profit podcast. In this episode, I will be interviewing comic book writer Ed Brisson. He is here to promote his 5-part story, The Displaced, from Boom Studios. The first issue comes out on Valentine's Day, February 14th. Issue 2 comes out on March 20th. And Ed, welcome to the Comics for Fun and Profit podcast. How are you doing today?
Yeah, I'm doing okay. It's pretty snowy out where I am right now, which I'm sure it's not where you are, but yeah, I'm just at the computer, just taking a little break from writing, so doing well.
But yes, thank you very much for your time. Thank you. I'm just going to quickly go over some of Ed's past and current works. Ed has a tremendous amount of work that he's done. I'm going to start off with, and Ed, please feel free to jump in if you want to add anything or if you want to talk a little bit about it. So yeah. So
Will do.
Murder Book, this was his first self-published crime series. For Image, he's written a number of books, but I'm just going to point out a couple. One was called The Comeback. And then another book that he did was called 4-part series called The Violent, with artist Adam Gorham. Now, Ed, you've seen my notes. I love this story. The opening page of this story is perfect. Adam drew it perfectly, and it's perfect because, it's a full page. We see it's like it shows us in the middle of the night at a park, and hopefully I got the main character's name correct. All we see is Mason. He's sitting on a picnic bench. He's sitting on top of the table. You see his full back. You see everything. You just see his back. He's just smoking a cigarette. And in the background, you see there's 2 or 3 houses he's in a neighborhood, it's a neighborhood park. I just love it because we don't know what Mason is thinking. is he, we don't know if he's just there to clear his head to get out of the house, or is he trying to plan a burglary in that neighborhood? That's the thing I love. It's a very good character-driven story and to me, it's a very character-driven story where the ex-con is trying to change his life, but one thing leads to another, and it just causes a spiral downward, and it's just great. Yeah. Do you want to comment on anything on that?
Yeah, no, thanks a lot. That one was a book that was pretty special to me when I was writing it, because it was about a lot of what was going on in Vancouver at the time, and Vancouver's changed a little bit since, but there's still a lot of these issues are still present there. But yeah, that opening page, we really wanted to bring the reader into that moment of Mason just sitting there and contemplating.
Yes.
And you don't know, like you said, it's not clear what he's contemplating, but he's just kind of lost a thought, and he's going through some sort of inner turmoil at the moment. But yeah, that book for me, I used to live in Vancouver at the time that I was writing that. I lived there for almost 20 years. And Vancouver now, everywhere is kind of going through it now, but Vancouver was like, I guess, on the vanguard of sort of housing unaffordability and having a housing crisis, which, had this monumental downward pressure. So, the further you were down on the social economic ladder, the more difficult it was for you to survive, more so than normal. And Vancouver has a really bad problem with drug addiction as well, which was something we really wanted to touch on within the book. Right now, the problems are largely with fentanyl, but back when we were writing the book at that time, it was largely a heroin-based issue.
Yes.
So these are like subjects that we wanted to talk about. We wanted to do a crime book that was set in Canada, which is not something you normally see. I think, Americans or people outside of Canada tend to see us as this very like polite society, very like almost like we don't have crime. And definitely we do. And so this is a book that, we wanted to address like the housing crisis and show how the housing crisis affected the drug crisis and how it affected crime, etc. Largely, this book was a bit of my breakup letter with the city. I finished writing that book, and then I got out of there. I moved away, and but it's still a book that I'm intensely proud of to this day.
Okay. Oh, well, thank you. Just thank you for letting me just tell you how much I love the book, and thank you for explaining it a little bit more in detail, like where your thoughts were on writing the book and so forth. But just thank you.
Yeah, no problem.
All right, I'm going to continue on, and Ed, again, please feel free to stop me. Excuse me. You've written a series for AWA, Sins of the Salton Sea. Now, if I remember correctly, I think that just recently came out and is now in trade, if I remember correctly.
The trade paperback is available in comic shops right now. I think it came out January 30th, if I'm not mistaken. And then it will be available in bookstores if you don't have access to the comic shop sometime later in February. I think around the 21st or the 20th. I can't recall the exact date.
Okay. And then also for DC, you have written the 2022 Batman Incorporated series. You are now correct me if I'm wrong, you're currently writing, is Stormwatch one of your series?
So that's wrapped. So I was writing Stormwatch in Batman Brave and the Bold, but I think we wrapped that about 4 or 5 months ago.
Okay, all right.
So currently I don't have anything ongoing at DC.
Okay. Now at Marvel, I know I'm not going to go over, you have an extensive work at Marvel. I'm just going to point out a couple, and you can point out the other ones. Like I know you wrote Avengers of the Wasteland. I read the first couple issues. Those are great. I read it.
Thanks.
Weird story. Sorry. I think the first 2 or 3 issues were available. This is like right before the pandemic, and when the pandemic shut down, my comic shop was like having a huge sale before the things got shut down. I remember picking up those first 3 issues. Those were great. And I still got to go back on Marvel Unlimited to finish it up. Contagion was another miniseries you did, if I remember correctly. And then you are currently writing the Predator series. And also, too, now issue 1 of the new story arc, Predator: The Last Hunt, will be out in comic shops on February 21st.
That's
Ed,
correct.
I'm sorry?
No, go ahead. Yep.
So
That's correct.
fun question. How many Predator action figures do you have?
I only have one.
Oh,
I do have one that sits where the hell is it?
no.
Yeah, it's back up here somewhere. But yeah, I just have one. I usually buy, when I'm writing a new series, if there's a figure based on the
Yes.
series, I'll normally pick up the figure. But I try to limit myself. I try to just stay to one. I don't have that much space here, so.
Yeah, I trust me, I understand because I'm going to show. I know this is audio, but yep, I have at least couple of the Predator action figures
I think actually that's the same one I have.
because I think this is like I think this one is
It's
from
the
the
Jungle
original
Hunter,
movie.
yeah.
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 All right. Now, Ed, is there anything I missed, or is there anything you want listeners to check out?
Yeah, I think with Marvel, I think the big things that I've written there would be like Old Man Logan,
Yes.
and then Dead Man Logan. I did Iron Fist
Mm-hmm.
as well. X-Force. I did some time on X-Men as well.
Mm-hmm.
Well, those are all like kind of the big ones. I'm gonna look at my shelf over here. I was on Ghost Rider for a while,
Yes. Mm-hmm.
and yeah, I think that's it. That's the exciting stuff. I'm sure that there's something else I'll remember afterwards.
Mm-hmm. No, but that's fine. No, thank you very much. Shout outs again, Ed. I want to thank you very much for giving me an advanced copy of the first issue of The Displaced. We'll talk more about it during the interview. And I also want to let listeners know I got some of my information about background about Ed on the Bearded Comic Bros YouTube podcast. It's titled Interview with Ed Brisson. That was dated on January 15th. If you guys get a chance, please check out that interview. It was a funny. When I watched it, it was a fun interview that you guys did. It was great.
Thanks.
Yeah. All right, Ed. Where can listeners follow you on social media?
Primarily just on, if you're looking for me on Twitter, I'm just at Ed Brisson.
Mm-hmm.
You can find me on Instagram, but that's mostly just me posting photos of my cats and food I cook. But if you're interested in that sort of stuff, Ed underscore Brisson
Mm-hmm.
there. Facebook and stuff. I'm trying to keep everything just to Twitter and Instagram though.
Oh yeah. No. Okay. All right. Now, Ed, I'm just gonna let's start talking about The Displaced.
Sure.
For the audience, I know what the story's about, but for our listeners, what is your story about?
So the sort of inciting incident in The Displaced is that the one night the city of Oshawa, Ontario, which is a real city, is where I'm from, it vanishes. Basically there's a sort of giant earthquake like event, and the entire city sinks. It just sinks into a sinkhole, and it's just gone. There's no rescue efforts turn up anything. No one knows what happened. There's 170,000 people missing. And our story primarily follows people who are from Oshawa who happened to be outside of the city limits when the city went. The city disappeared. It was like about 2:30, 3 o'clock in the morning. So
yes,
most people are at home. So we're following the survivors as they're trying to get answers. The whole world is trying to get answers. This becomes a very like a global sort of news story that this has happened. Everyone across the world's talking about it. Everyone's trying to figure out where everyone is. No one can, we can't find where, we know that they've been swallowed up by the earth, and but there's just kind of no evidence that anyone was ever there.
Yes.
And this gets kind of into our series a little bit, but the primary thing that starts happening is that people start forgetting that Oshawa ever existed in a very short matter of time. And as a result, start forgetting about the people, even the survivors. So we have these survivors that by no verifiable means actually exist anymore. They're
Yes.
here, people can see them, but people can't retain memories. They can't open bank accounts. They can't, they can't hold jobs. They can't survive. So it becomes very difficult for them to survive. And so our book follows five cast members. We've got Emmett,
Yes.
who is, a guy who is out of town drinking with a friend who'd
Yeah.
sort of been dealing with his dad, who was in the hospital
Mm-hmm.
for Alzheimer's, who'd had some issues. So he was his dad's primary caregiver. His dad's gone after
Mm-hmm.
Oswald's gone. Gabby, a mother who had to run out early in the morning to buy
Yes.
diapers
Mm-hmm.
because they ran out of diapers and needed them. There's two teens, Tavis and Haley. Sorry, Tavis and Paige,
Yes.
who were basically like, we don't kind of know what they were up to, but they were just
Yeah. Yes.
being teenagers, just kind of
Yeah.
hanging around outside of city limits, bumming cigarettes off of
Yes.
strangers. And then Harold, who's this sort of enigmatic older man who knows we know that he knows something about what's going on, and he was trying to actually warn people about it to no effect, essentially. So this book follows these five as they try and cope with the aftermath of this event happening, as they try and survive and find ways to get by in a world that doesn't acknowledge them in any way.
Yes. I just want to ask you a couple more questions before I tell you my thoughts on it. But let me change this around a little bit. I know I'm going to preface this a little bit before I ask the question. In the Bearded Comic Bro interview, I know you mentioned that you described this story as sort of almost like a Twilight Zone like a Twilight Zone story.
Yes.
And also, I'm going to say this too, and I'm making this clear. It's not a religious thing. There's no religious themes, but I was kind of thinking, I'm wondering if it was because of your Catholic background that it's almost a little bit like sort of a rapture story where a city is, people are taken away off the face of the earth, or something. I just thought of that. It's just some random.
Yeah. So
it's just a
just
random
a couple things there. Yeah. I'm not actually Catholic, but
Okay.
I think what you're picking up on is that I probably talked about it in another podcast. I did go to Catholic school growing up.
Yes.
Which is for people listening people who didn't grow up in Ontario are probably not aware of that. In Ontario, you have your public school system, which is like your public sort of non-denominational school. It also includes Catholic schools.
Yes.
And so your Catholic school is not like elsewhere, like it might be a private school. It's not. It's actually like a public school that you could just go to. And my parents were like fair weather Catholics, Easter and church, Easter and Christmas. But I'm absolutely not myself. But the rapture question, it's I'm being hesitant to say what happened.
Oh yeah.
But I think that within the book, definitely people have their own theories, and the rapture is definitely one sort of theory that's floating around, that this is some thing where Oshawa was scooped up because there were evil drug users and whatever living there. Oshawa in Ontario has a fairly bad reputation. Unfortunately, it was a blue collar town that does have issues with drug addiction, has fairly high crime rates. But yeah, I think in the book, the fun of it is that we could play around with different theories and why different people think this happened or where they think everyone's gone to. And so yeah, it's definitely not. I'm definitely not saying it's one thing or another.
Oh no, yeah, no, but
that's me evading an answer.
No, but it's just just like I said, I'm not trying to say there's this is what it is, but it's just kind of little fun little nuggets like so I'm sorry, so I'm going to go back to my question was like, how did you come up with this story? Like, were you like in a bar? Because if I remember correctly, I think you were working on this story for 15 years. Like, were you in a bar one day or at a coffee shop going, I'm wondering what if this happened and
No, it came from my I left Oshawa when I was a teenager,
Mm-hmm.
and my mom moved us to the other side of the country. So Oshawa, Ontario, to Kelowna, British Columbia, which are about 5,000 kilometers apart. So I know 3,000 miles, something like
Mm-hmm.
that. And for me, I used to go back to Oshawa once every couple of years. Like we'd go to Ontario to visit my dad, and I would go down to Oshawa. Or else when I got older, I'd do road trips and I'd
Mm-hmm.
stop in Oshawa. And part of the thing with this story was like um my own relationship with the city. Like every time I go back, it's like
Mm-hmm.
I would recognize it less and less. There's stuff that's still like very much the same. There's a lot of businesses that were there
Yeah.
when I was a
Mm-hmm.
teenager that are still there, but there was just that feeling of disconnection when I would go back there. Like it felt like, you know, I just didn't see people I knew anymore,
Yes.
and
Mm-hmm.
and so it felt like I was kind of disconnected and almost forgotten, if that
Mm-hmm.
makes sense.
Yeah.
And so part of it just came from that. It was just that sort of feeling and that idea, and I was just kind of playing around with it, and sort of just led me
Mm-hmm.
to the idea that eventually became, the book that's coming out now.
I have to say that's pretty cool. That's
Thanks.
that's a that that is really nice. That's yeah. Um, I know we already talked a little bit about your characters, like Emmett. Yeah, Emmett is. You know, let me start talking a little bit about what I read was I really love these five characters. Well, except for the two teenagers, because I really don't, but I kind of start feeling for them. I you know I love this first issue because I care for these characters, especially for Emmett and Gabby, because Emmett um and I and Ed, I want to also say is too, um the dialogue feels natural because when we meet Emmett, it's him and his friend, I think Zach, are in a bar,
Yep.
and it's just regular small, well, not small, but it's just regular talk. It's like, because they're trying to figure out, like, what's that guy's name? Didn't we go to East High School with him? And they'd be like, Hoover. No, they're just trying to figure out his name, and it's just great because there's no sense of what's going to happen to them. It's
Right.
just a great moment. We know we start, and then just in those first, and correct me, for maybe 2 or 3 pages, we learn about Emmett. He's just a guy. He's just a regular guy. He's got here. We know he still works. Like you said, he takes care of his dad. He gets a phone call. He's like, oh God, don't tell me. He groped a nurse, and now they're calling to let me know or complain or something. And then he gets the breaking news from the nursing home, and I don't want to go into it, but you can tell that he loves his dad, even though there's kind of a little bit of something between him and his dad, but he loves his dad.
Right.
And I also love Gabby too, because Gabby, you know, it seems like she's the one that's taking care of the household. And she goes out. She goes, no, no, no. Let me go out. Let me go. It's hilarious. She goes, no, no. Even though it's 2 in the morning, let me go out. Let me go grab the diapers. And then we find out she's trying to, like, she sneaks out to get cigarettes too.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think Gabby was a lot of fun. They're both fun, but Gabby is like the closest to what I really am like, I think, as a
Hmm.
person. I don't smoke, but like that whole idea that she's woken up at 2:30 in the morning because their baby needs diapers, and she goes out because I'm the same. If someone wakes me up at 2:30 in the morning,
Hmm.
I'm not falling back asleep. I'm done for the night. I'm awake
Yeah.
until I pass
Okay.
out from exhaustion the
Hmm.
next day. Um, so yeah, I think they were, though, Emmett's really fun. They're not really based on people I know, other than Gabby
Okay.
has some of my traits, I think.
Hmm.
But like Emmett and Zach are like kind of loosely not based on anyone particular, but the idea of people I went to school with.
Yeah. No.
That
Yeah.
whole exchange they're having at the
Yes.
beginning is actually largely based around a rumor from when I went to school that what
Okay.
had
No.
been
Yeah.
floating around. So this is I pulled some stuff from my own life to put in there. But I think with Gabby, I think I like the idea that we don't always show parents at the beginning who like are just like I didn't want her to be like this mother whose whole personality is being a mother, you know what I
Yes.
mean? So she has this, we know that there's this other stuff that's going on with her. And so this idea of her sneaking off to get a couple cigarettes because she can't really smoke, obviously, in the house. So, she has some sort of not like giant secrets, but little,
Yeah,
little
it's
bits of
just,
herself.
yeah.
And I don't know, she's a lot of fun. Emmett, I think Emmett has got a bit of my sort of sometimes dourness,
Mhm.
into his character, but no, they're great. And then Tavis, one of the teenagers, he's just kind of a dick. He's got other stuff going on, and then Paige, she's just very quiet and sort of in the background,
Yes.
which changes obviously as the series goes on. But they're it's a lot of fun to come up with those characters and really kind of like spend some time with Luca and hone in on those designs
Hmm.
and make the design and the character like really really fit and really mesh together.
One of the things I really love about your characters is that they're relatable. They're very down to earth. Like again, it goes back. Let's go. I'm sorry, I don't mean to keep picking at the bar. Or let's. I'm going to say let's talk about a little bit about Gabby. Is that they're very relatable. Like like Gabby is a mother, but yes, yeah, okay, okay, yeah, okay, yeah. You forgot to buy the diapers again. Oh, great. No, let me go out. Okay. But then it gives her, but it's like with pretty much, I'm not a parent, or it's like with most people, it's like, okay, yeah, I'm going to use this excuse. It's a real thing I need to do. It's a task I need to do, but it's a little bit of a break to get away from things for a little bit too. And it's like, yeah,
Sure.
to show, yeah, and it's just great. You know, it's a normal feeling. That's the thing I love about Gabby and Emmett. They're relatable. They're very relatable, you know.
Great. Well,
Um,
yeah, I'm glad you think that because that was like definitely something we are going for. I like wanted to make these people who seem, because what we want to do is obviously thrust these like what seem like ordinary people
yes.
into this very extraordinary situation and then
Yes.
see how they react and see at what points they break and what their thresholds are
Yes.
for the
Mhm.
stress we're about to heap upon them.
And I know you saw my notes, but because this is sort of like the premise of most of the Twilight Zone movies. Whenever we see some of the best Twilight Zone stories, it's always ordinary people, and something extraordinary happens to them. And
Hmm.
it's how do they react to it? You know.
Yeah, and like,
Mhm.
and before we went on air, we talked about it a bit, but I'm a giant Twilight Zone fan. I grew up
Yes.
watching Twilight Zone, both the 60s and the I think underappreciated 80s series.
Yes. Yeah.
And so I think, like having watched that stuff at such a young age, I
Hmm.
think it sort of just informs my own sort of
Hmm.
storytelling sensibilities and
Hmm.
the kind of stuff that gets me excited. And definitely, so that's why when I started developing it, felt very much like
Yes.
this sort of Twilight Zone
Hmm.
concept, sort of blown up to a much
Hmm.
larger story. But
Um, and I'm going to say you don't have to comment on this, but actually, let me also mention this too. But um, and also I'll tie it in a little bit more about what also the Twilight Zone, some of the best Twilight Zone stories are. Is that the other thing I also love is that I love how you have there's like you said, it's a huge worldwide event where it's worldwide coverage. You see news reporters out there. Um, when Emmett and Zach are back at that bar that's outside of um Oshawa, you see the big screen TV behind them, and it's like you see you know city disappears and stuff. And also too, when Paige shows, I think is it Travis, her boyfriend? I can't.
Tavis,
Okay.
no R, yeah.
Okay. Um, oh look, the social media coverage. Look what they're doing. I love how you incorporate that into there, all this coverage too, you know. Um, and then and also too, um, like it's already in the first issue, but already some of the people are starting to forget, you know, who,
Yes.
like completely, who is, like they completely start to forget about when they talk. I think when Gabby was talking to her husband's in-laws.
She's talking to her in-law, her husband's parents, and having a lot of like issues around that, and that's because it's starting. Um, and this is like, I don't know, like I don't want to give away too much
Yeah.
about
Oh,
the
I'm
book,
sorry.
but there's
Yes.
something that if readers start paying attention to like where the news reports are coming from as is going on, I think there's something that they'll start to notice about what is sort of happening in the world around them.
Hmm.
Uh, but I'm not gonna. I
Oh,
don't
no,
want to
no,
dive
no.
too deep into it because
Yes.
I don't want to
I'm
give away the
sorry.
whole
Yes.
story.
Sorry.
But no, not at all.
But no, but the other thing I also love about too is that, um, um, but it's just great because there's a little bit, and to me, it started, there's a little bit about, to me, I just thought it was a little bit of nice of a commentary of what's going on in the world today. You know, that's the other thing. Like we talk about Twilight Zone episodes, ordinary people, extraordinary things, but also too, there's a little bit of a message. Well, it's not intentional, because anyone could read it anyway. But I
Mhm.
thought I loved it. Sorry, I can't. I know we can't talk too much about it, but yeah. Um, on that, I'm just going to continue on. Your artist, Luca Casalanguida. How did you guys team up?
He had done work years ago on. I think the book was called Lost Soldiers. That a couple of years ago that it came out now, and I had really liked his work. I think I'd seen his work on some James Bond stuff as well.
Oh, okay.
And so he was a guy who I had just sort of like
Mm-hmm.
I tend to keep like a post-it note of like artists that I want to
Yes.
work with, that whose work I enjoy. And so when I had come up with this, I'd been working on this concept for forever. I had pitched it years ago with the different artists. That was, over 10 years ago now. And it was almost
Mm-hmm.
my first book,
Yes.
but then the publisher wanted changes I didn't want to do, so we didn't do it. Um, so this time around, when I'd been sort of going back and forth with this project, trying to figure it out, and when all the pieces kind of came into place, and I needed an artist, he was actually the first one I approached. I just really loved his style.
Mm-hmm.
I thought it
Yes.
would be a great compliment. He does
Mm-hmm.
like really, he does like grounded stuff really well, but can really explode for the fantastical elements that we needed.
Yes.
And that was important for the story. So, it was as simple as me um, I think I sent him a direct message on Twitter
Okay.
just to
Yeah.
ask if he wanted to work together, and then we exchanged emails and corresponded through email. And yeah, it was, I sent him the concept, he was into it, and it was as simple as that, really. We put together a pitch package and then kind of started showing it around, and Boom was interested, and that's how we got here.
Oh, that's nice. Um, did you have to like I'm just it's just a process question. Did you have to send them like photo references of parts of Oshawa or anything?
Yeah, I tend to include a lot of photo references, or just I tend to include reference material a lot in my scripts,
Okay.
specific like especially photos. And Oshawa was important because there was very specific locations. Like
Yes. Mm-hmm.
the thing I want with this book is if somebody goes to Oshawa, they could, or in
Yes.
surrounding area, they could
Mm-hmm.
conceivably find the locations where everything
Mm-hmm.
has been set. For copyright reasons, we've changed the names of
Oh
diners
yeah.
and stuff
Mm-hmm.
like that because
Yeah.
no one wants to get sued. But yeah, I've sent them. I think the first script, like the page count on the first issue is 30 pages,
Mm-hmm.
and if let's just actually while we're talking, I'll open up the script, and I can tell you exactly how long the script was because of how much reference material I put in there. Let's go to number 1. And so the script I sent him was, one moment here. Yeah, so 30 pages. Oh, I didn't put nearly as, there's a ton of reference, but yeah, so it came to 66 pages, the actual script. So that's because I have plugged in 30 pages, 36 pages worth of reference material, give or take. And so that's like, everything from like the photos of the park that, Tavis and Paige are hanging out in.
Yes.
The photos of all the kind of memes we wanted to have in that one Twitter.
Yes.
Which the funny thing about that is when I was talking to my editor and when I was talking to Luca when I was writing it, I had explained that if Oshawa actually disappeared, the rest of Ontario would post probably really shitty memes about it, about how happy they were it was gone. And that's why we put that in there. And then when we announced the book and that the book, was set in Oshawa and Oshawa disappeared, a bunch of people from Ontario essentially did exactly as predicted. Posting a bunch of things about how, nobody would really care if Oshawa went, et cetera, et cetera. Which is not how I feel about, I love Oshawa.
But it's just.
But it was really funny to see it actually happen, So yes, everything in every location in there is basically a real life location, even if we change names. And in some instances, I think might have slightly fudged where they're located. Not really, but sort of.
Mm-hmm.
And actually, like even Gabby's house that we just see briefly in the first issue is the house I grew up in. So we use that as photo reference.
Mm-hmm.
But even the bus yard at the beginning is actual bus yard in Oshawa.
Okay. So, like you said, you have to change certain names of if there was a certain location with a company, you have to change certain names. So, fun question. I take it we're not going to see a Tim Hortons coffee shop in the near future in there, huh?
No Tim Hortons. No, I've in the past I have like put into other books Tim Hortons sort of proxy companies. I think in one we jokingly called it Tom Morton's. But yeah, no Tim Hortons. No Tim Hortons in this one.
So for listeners that may not know what Tim Hortons is, it's like and I've heard of, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, Ed, but I've heard it's almost like a Starbucks in Canada. It's like a coffee shop.
So
yes.
No, yes and no.
Okay.
I would say it runs closer to Dunkin'.
Okay.
Dunkin' Donuts.
That's right. Okay.
In terms of, and I'm imagining you probably have the same sort of divide in the States, whereas in Canada there is like a kind of a class divide too between Tim Hortons and Starbucks. So Starbucks tends to be like a more like, it's not like fancy. We're not saying it's fancy.
No, yeah,
it's a chain. It's about as fancy as Olive Garden, right? But like it's more like a where the yuppie.
Yes.
Where like the people who go to Tim Hortons would say that's where all the yuppies go. Tim Hortons is more like a working, like where it's like working class kind of like thing. But it also depends where you live. So like I lived I grew up in Ontario, so I grew up at like a Tim Hortons kid. But then I lived in Vancouver for 20 years, and I would go to Starbucks over Tim Hortons. It was a little bit more expensive, but I always just like the coffee that much more. And now that I'm back on the East Coast, I have like a Tim Hortons, like a 6-minute walk from my house. So I go there far more than
oh my God,
far more than the other.
Oh my God, you must be hitting up on, I'm joking on this part. You must go down there and just go get the Timbits, huh? They're like the donut, for us it's called donut holes, but
Timbits. Yeah, no, you know what? So for a while we used to do this thing during the pandemic where my wife, kid, and I would go out for donuts every Saturday because restaurants largely closed, and we'd get donuts every Saturday. I can't eat donuts now. We did that for 6 months.
Oh my God.
and I just can't have like I in the course of 6 months, I think I had enough donuts for a lifetime.
Yeah.
And
Yes.
so I don't even like Tim Hortons. They brought back these classic donuts that Canadians over a certain age would remember, that I remember growing up with, and I got one of those. But beyond that,
Mhm.
yeah, I do go down there for coffee though. It's because it's like I said, it's a nice walk from my house, gets me out of the
Yeah.
house.
All right. All right. So, um, do you want to give shout outs to the rest of your creative team?
Yeah, so we've got pardon me here. We've got Dee Cunniffe on colors. He's someone I have not worked with before, but he and I had been talking about working together for a long time. So
Hmm.
actually, when we started putting this creative team together, he was my first stop to see if he wanted to do uh, colors,
Hmm.
and thankfully he was in. I think his colors complement Luca's work really well.
Yes. Hmm.
I had a feeling they would work together well, but I
Okay.
feel like they've exceeded my expectations. This just
Hmm.
looks so much good. Like those two were born to work together.
Hmm.
Um, Hassan Osman Aliou um,
Hmm.
is on lettering,
Yes.
and I apologize if I butchered his last name. I used to letter for a decade plus. That's
Hmm.
and it was hard for me to give up lettering, especially on my creator-owned books. I like kind of having that control.
Hmm.
But I love Hassan's work. I think he's a really smart letterer. He makes a lot of really cool choices.
Hmm.
It does a lot of really interesting things. And so, as long as he'll stick around, I always bring him on any creator-owned
Oh,
project I
okay.
work on.
Hmm.
Um, and Elizabeth Bree is our editor, who is this is my first time working with her, but she's been
Hmm.
great. She's an incredibly thoughtful
Hmm.
editor who's very good at like sort of poking
Hmm. Yes.
what might be the weak points in
Yes.
the thing, and I think the scripts are stronger uh,
Hmm.
for her input. So she's been really great along the way, and yeah, I think that's it for creative team. We know Eric Harburn has been there,
Hmm.
but more like he was an editor, but more sort of in a secondary, like Elizabeth's taking point on it. He was there
Hmm.
as well, and he's always great to work with. He and I have worked together a bunch in the past,
Oh, that's
and
good.
always love working with
Mhm.
them.
Thank you. I'm slowly wrapping things up. What was one or the many things that you love working on the displays on this
For
series?
me, I just love finally getting to do this project. Like we hinted at before, is I've been working on this concept since 2008.
Hmm.
And so finally sitting down, finally getting to do it, has been just a thrill. Like it's just this thing where I've needed to just exercise the story and just get it
Hmm.
out there.
Yes.
Um, for me, just seeing like being able to like revisit Oshawa and use very like specific locations. For me as a kid growing up reading comic books, everything was set in New York, or
Yes.
everything
Hmm.
was set in some fictional city if it was a
Yeah.
DC book. And so I never, you never got to see the place you live
Hmm.
in comics. The closest I think, Oshawa was about an hour outside of Toronto. Occasionally we'd see Toronto and things. But so I like the idea that, hopefully there's some kid in Oshawa who reads comics who's just going to be excited to
Yes.
see, his or her own city in a book. One of the things I'm really looking forward to as well is I'm doing a signing tour,
Yes.
and we're our launch party's in Oshawa. So
Yes.
we're launching it at Worlds Collide Comics
Yes.
on February 17th. I
17th.
think we're there
Yes.
from
Hmm.
noon till 4. And that Worlds Collide in a previous life had been Unicorn Comics. And
Okay.
Unicorn Comics is the shop I used to go to when I was a kid.
Oh my
So
God.
this is this nice, like kind of like,
Yes.
full circle thing. I've signed at Worlds Collide in the past. They're great, the folks there. But yeah, we've been putting a lot of effort into like kind of building this signing, hopefully into something very special. A lot of like news coverage, and that Oshawa is like a lot of Oshawa press outlets have been pretty excited about it, pretty good
Yes.
about it. bolstering it. So that's the one thing right now that I'm like super excited to go out and do.
That is, I'm just gonna sorry, I'm just gonna ask one process question about that. Like, you know, was this your idea to do the book signing um at World Collide Comics, or was it, like who came up with who came up with that idea to
I
start to kick it off, the tour?
So I've been in touch with them a little bit over the years. We talk back and forth periodically. Is they had I did a book years ago, just to quickly rewind. I did a book at Boom years ago
Mm-hmm.
called The Last Contract. And I set chunks of The Last Contract in Oshawa as well.
Mm-hmm.
Not the entire story, but he leaves from BC, this hitman, and drives cross country with a dead body in the trunk of his car because he's
Mm-hmm.
trying to, find someone. And so parts of it were set in Oshawa. And when that came out, I think someone from the store reached out to me to ask me why I'd set it in Oshawa, and they didn't know, that I was from Oshawa at the time. So
Yeah.
I mentioned the why of it, and then so we, had kind of kept in touch. And I did a signing there in 2022, so about a year and a half ago during the summer, during a big road trip I did. And I told them then about the pitch that, it was going out and there was some interest. And then when it got picked up by Boom, I mentioned it to them and I said, hey, when this comes out, let's do, because it's all about Oshawa, let's do something up. And so they were excited about it. They're doing their own store exclusive cover. They have Richard Pace, who will also be at the signing.
Yes.
He's done an incredible cover. It's pretty gruesome, but it's great.
Mm-hmm.
So he and I will be there. So they're doing their own cover to help promote it. I'm going to have my own cover on the tour as well. That will be available at stores. But it was just us talking back and forth and setting it up.
Oh, that's so cool. Now, correct me if I'm wrong. For more tour information about your the Displaced release tour, they can find it on your Twitter feed. And
yeah, if you just go to my Twitter feed, it's there. I've got all the dates listed. I think I'm hitting 9 stores over the course of 12 days.
Mm-hmm.
I haven't, so I'm going to have my own tour exclusive cover. So there's a cover that you'll only be able to get from me while I'm on tour. And the cover's by Chip Zdarsky. And we haven't revealed what the cover looks like. I can tell you it's great because I obviously have seen it. It's back from the printer already.
Mm-hmm.
But so we'll be revealing that on the 12th, just before the launch of the tour. But if you want tour dates and stuff like that, just go to my Twitter, or I guess the thing I should have mentioned earlier is you can just go to edbrisson.com, and that will have sort of all my information and stuff there.
All right, Ed, 2 more questions. I'm going to wrap this up.
Let's do it.
Fun question, and I've been waiting, and we talked about this a little bit. Have you and your family been to Hawaii?
Never, but
yes,
it's a huge point of contention between my father and I, because when I was 16, my dad was going to bring me, my brother and sister, and I to Disney World.
Mm-hmm.
And something happened. I can't remember. The cost went up, and he was like, wasn't sure if he was going to be able to afford it. So I bailed on the trip so that he could bring my brother and sister. Because I was 16, I was like, I don't, I wasn't sure. I think I had like a pretty steady girlfriend at the time too. So I was like, I'll just stay back in Kelowna. But when I bailed, he was like, okay, to make it up to you, next year you and I are going to go to Hawaii. I was like, well, shit, yeah, I want to go to Hawaii. I'll do that. I'd much rather do that. And it might even been like he bartered, like I could go to Hawaii instead. And to this day, I've not been to Hawaii. And at least once a year, I bring it up to my father. It's been, God, I don't know, about 30 years now.
Oh my God.
And I still am trying to get him to make good on his promise. I'm not sure that's going to happen in my lifetime, but we'll see. But that's my whole thing. I've never been, but I've been promised.
Okay. Last question. Any closing words to our listeners?
No, just check out The Displaced when it comes out on on February 14th on Valentine's Day. Ditch your sweetie for the afternoon and go pick it up, and
Yes.
then make it up to him or her later on that evening. And yeah, that's about it. Then the week after, is the new Predator. So back to back. Brisson, if you're looking for it, so February 21st. And if you haven't read it already, please do go check out Sins of the Salton Sea, which, like we mentioned, trade paperback came out just a few days ago. It's a very fun crime supernatural book that I'm quite proud of.
Ed, I want to say, mahalo. Thank you very much for your time. Thank you for giving me an opportunity to interview you. I wish you all the success with The Displaced. I really hope it's it's going to be a big seller. I really hope,
Fingers crossed. Fingers crossed.
Yes. Readers, if you are a new comic book reader or a lifelong comic book reader and you love science fiction stories or Twilight Zone stories, please check out The Displaced from Boom Studios. The first issue comes out on Valentine's Day, February 14th, and the second issue comes out on March 20th. I love this first issue. In the first few pages, I got to know who Emmett is and Gabby, and the rest of the gang that was affected by this huge event. I love these characters because they feel like these are people that I know. Ed, I didn't get a chance to tell you this, but I love the dialogue. It flows very naturally. It's very real. That's the thing I love about it. And I love the pace of the story. It was perfect. It's in this first issue, it just, we get to know who, these characters are. Just in a couple pages, in the first few pages, the event happens. They show what's happening afterwards. And then I just love the pacing of it. It's great. It's very good.
Thank you.
I'm being serious. For listeners, if you love these types of stories, and if you have a friend who loves, comics and these types of science fiction stories, please pick up an extra copy and give it to them. It's kind of like, when we were kids, we like to share comics when we were kids. Um, I want to thank Drew, the host of Comics for Fun and Profit, for putting this episode together. Drew, thank you very much for all your hard work behind the scenes. And if you are a new listener, please check out new episodes of Comics for Fun and Profit that comes out every Saturday. And I want to thank you, the listeners. Thank you very much for your time. Thank you for listening to this episode. Until next time, guys. Aloha.
Our LCS is Cowabunga Comics, Lake Country, Wisconsin's best pop culture destination for new comics, back issues, gaming, retro video games, vinyl, and figures. Give them a call, 262-569-9999. Check them out online at cowabungacomics.com or follow them on Twitter at Incredicow. They are our LCS, and we utilize their deep discount mail order service to bring Oconomowoc, Wisconsin closer to us. They'll take care of you. Tell them Drew and Kyle sent you. Say hi to Eric and James from us. If you need an LCS, you can't go wrong with Cowabunga Comics.